Now this is a key for anyone that's not heard me speak before. This is perhaps the most important thing anyone can remember about this manipulation. It is the manipulation technique that has advanced this agenda and continues to more than any other mass mind control technique. The 33rd degree of Freemasonry has a Latin motto, ordo ab chaos, which means order out of chaos. Create the chaos, destroy the status quo by creating the chaos, and then you can offer your new order out of the chaos and replace the previous status quo. I call it problem, reaction, solution. Classic. What you do, you've got one force that is manipulating through two sides. Again, you want to control the game, control two sides, you know what the outcome's going to be pretty much. So this, the Illuminati, they put and funded both sides in the Second World War. Joseph Stalin was one of their front men. Winston Churchill was one of their front men. He comes from the an offshoot of the very aristocratic Marlborough bloodline at Blenheim Palace. And in America, one of the greatest front men of the 20th century for the Illuminati in that country, as I said earlier, Franklin Roosevelt. Over here, the Teutonic Knights wing of the Illuminati had created the Nazi Party and brought them to power. What you do then is you play them off against each other. Problem, reaction, solution. You create the conflict of the Second World War, and then people say, understandably, after 2 world wars in such a short time, they are mentally, emotionally, physically exhausted. And they say, something must be done, this can't go on, what are they going to do about it? At that point, they who have created the problem offer the solutions to the problems they've created. Hey, we want the European Union, we want the World Bank, we want the IMF, all of which are Illuminati controlled. And we want to centralize power under the United Nations, which is a stalking horse, a stepping stone to the world government. What happens every time with problem, reaction, solution is the same thing. First of all, you covertly create the problem. Crucially at this point, you have to divert public attention from asking open-mindedly, who's behind this sodding thing that's going on? So immediately, as soon as you can, you name the villain. When you kill Kennedy in 1963, you name Lee Harvey Oswald, who, unless he had a gun that shot bullets that then went round and went back again, could not possibly have killed Kennedy. Little niceties, a lot of people miss that in Washington, it seems. When you kill all those people on 9/11, you immediately name bin Laden. And I've got the tapes. They were naming him on the television networks immediately after those planes hit. In the hour or so afterwards, they were wheeling people on from Congress saying, oh, I've got a contact in the FBI. They say they think it's bin Laden, bin Laden, bin Laden, bin Laden. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to sell your version of the problem you've covertly created to the people. Now, if we had a media worth the name, if we had journalists, there are honorable exceptions, but oh my God, so few. If we had journalists that really were journalists, problem, reaction, solution would break down immediately. Because what would happen is the official version of the story would be given to the journalist to pass to the public. Instead of that, they'd say, hold on a minute, let's have a look at this. Let's investigate this. Does this add up? Does that add up? How does that work out? And they would communicate their findings to the people. And I know from my own research over the years, it takes very little time to take these official stories apart. There's not one strand of 9/11 that fits with another. I'll come to in a second. But what happens instead of that is the journalistic profession overwhelmingly has become a public relations office for the official version of events. So what happens is the officials... it's so important, this. The official version gets given to the journalists and it gets passed on virtually undiluted to the public. There's not one strand of the official 9/11 story that hasn't come from an official source. Pentagon sources say that. White House sources say that. And so you sell your manufactured movie to the people, and you want the people to say, this can't go on, something must be done, what are they going to do about it? Crucially, you want the people outraged and you want them frightened. Because once people are in fear, they look outside of themselves for people to protect them from what they've been manipulated to fear. Now, once they've said that to you, do something, you can play your sting, which is offering the solutions to the problems you have created, which are changes in legislation that take away more basic freedoms, and away we go, the agenda. That's problem, reaction, solution. It's happening all the time. 9/11 was the most classic example of it, the most blatant, crystal clear example of it you can imagine. I've gone in the book here in great detail, but I've going to go through it, and that moment when those planes hit was in effect the trigger to push this agenda on in leaps and bounds, which is what we've seen since and what we're seeing now. It allows, as Cheney said, a war to start, which he said probably wouldn't end in our lifetimes. And what is this war? It is a war on terrorism, a war that can never ever said to have been won. How can it? Not that any war is won, that's an illusion as well. But they've got a situation, thanks to 9/11, in which they can target any country as a terrorist state and go in and conquer it, and therefore bring about the list of conquests that has been in the pipeline for a long time. Now, does anyone really believe George Bush is calling the tune here? I mean, you know, this guy is further up the Illuminati chain by a mile than this fella, and also behind him is his father, George Bush. As presidents go, presidents not really very high in the hierarchy. They're high enough to be in awareness, but not really high. This guy was as high as any that I've come across in modern times anyway. And he's had 3 terms as President of the United States, 2 officially under Reagan, then his own. Clinton is subordinate to this guy in the hierarchy, and then comes his son. This fellow is real important in what's going on in the background of all this. And this is kind of well symbolized by some of this stuff. This is very symbolic of what's actually going on. And then there's Tony Blair. Tony Blair. That's love, isn't it? You can see it in the eyes. That is deep, deep love. Tony Blair is a placeman by the same network that controls him. Therefore, they both act in unison no matter what the hell the people in their countries are saying. This is a wonderful example of 9/11, but also the world we're living in general. And in the Alice in Wonderland books, nothing would be what it is because everything would be what it isn't. And contrary-wise, what it is, it wouldn't be, and what it wouldn't be, it would, you see. Smoke and mirrors. Everything that says one thing means another all the time. Everything needs reversing. And this has happened many times. 60 years before 9/11, we had Pearl Harbor. Franklin Roosevelt, when he went for his second term in office, he had to sell himself to the people. The people did not want their children to go into another war in Europe so soon after the carnage of the first one. So he ain't going to say, hey, we're going to send the troops into Europe and fight in that war. No, we're not having you, Franklin. Bugger off, mate. So what does he say? If you read his speeches, over and over again, he said, mothers of America, I tell you, your sons are not going to fight in that war in Europe, not if I'm president. Oh, we'll have you, Franklin. So he gets in office, but he knows they're going to fight in another war in Europe. But how can he pull it off and still be the good guy? As a number of books, both immediately after the war and some since, have shown in great detail, Japan was manipulated to attack Pearl Harbor. There were sanctions on oil and other things. And also, this guy had at least 8 to 10 different intelligence confirmations that Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, was going to be attacked. Nothing was done. Why? Because they wanted it to happen. And it happened, and outrage, and America's in the war.